Well, good afternoon. We have chosen to pre-record tonight's service and post it earlier so people can enjoy the game tonight with family and friends. Super Bowl Sunday has become a must-see TV event. As you can see, I'm ready for the big game with my Chiefs shirt, and I will be watching with some friends tonight. The theme chosen for this time together is being on God's team. Seems kind of appropriate for this Super Bowl Sunday. My best friend got me being a Chiefs fan a long time ago. On Sunday afternoons after church, I would go home with them, have lunch, dinner, and Sunday dinner, and then we'd sit down and watch Chiefs games with his dad. And from that time on, I've been a fan. But whether you're a fan of the Chiefs, as I have been for these 50 some odd years, or a fan of the 49ers, as my son and nephew have been since they were young men, or maybe even you're not rooting for either team, but you just want to see a good football game. Most of us will be watching the game tonight, and I hope you enjoy it. But for now, I have a message to bring about being on God's team. As I began to think about this theme, it spurred some questions in me like, what is this God's team? Have I chosen to be on God's team just as much as I choose to be a Chiefs fan? What does it mean to be on God's team? What is God's team all about? Then one other question says, am I just a fan of God's team like I'm a fan of the Chiefs? Or have I chosen to be more than a fan, but rather a team player and a team member? And what's that difference? Let me take a moment here right now to share my concept of who this one I call God is. I choose to use the name God for one who was creator of the universe as we know and still don't know about. In the Hebrew Bible, he was often called Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, El Shaddai, and other names. They are all different meanings for the implication of his power to describe all how powerful and all sufficient and all majesty he was. This supreme being that I call God has gone for so many different names in different cultures, but I call him Lord my God. Fan versus a team member. What does that mean to me? If you're a fan, are you an occasional fan or a supportive fan or maybe even a super fan? Or have you chosen to be a teammate and be part of the team when we talk about God's team? Well, I could tell you in the beginning, I was a fan sitting by and watching the team and rooting for them just like I do the Chiefs, but more of a passive fan just watching, not really being a team member. But I was not, I was not really investing much of my time or anything into the outcome of whatever this team was about. Then, as I became more supportive of not only rooting for this team and many team members, But I began to invest some time and support and resources to support the team, God's team, and its members. You know, I believe we are all called to be on God's team as players and team members. You may have started out just like me, a fan. You may have been baptized, committed yourself to Jesus Christ, going to church and practicing the sacraments. But as a fan of the chief, I was just buying clothes, wearing them, watching games maybe, and once in a while I might even attend a game. And that's pretty much all I was doing, just going to church and saying, yeah, I believe there's a God. But in either case, I was not really a team member or a teammate. But you see, I have become to know that God hopes we will accept the challenge to be more. No one is exempt from being called, but it is our choice to join the team or not. You know, this God that I know loves diversity. So God's team needs all of our gifts, talents, and our skills developed so the team can succeed. So how do I know God loves diversity? Because I see it in the nature, I see it in all his creation, but most of all, I see it in all the people. All people are of immeasurable worth to God. We have our place on God's team if we so choose. So the question might be for you, have you chosen to be on God's team? You know, eventually I did. I chose to follow his son, Jesus Christ. I think I began to be a team member when I was at Graceland College sitting in a interdenominational communion service. And God shared his love for me as a person, showed his grace to me of who I could become and what I could do. And he was asking me, could I share the gifts and talents he gave me to be a part of his diverse, as part of his diverse creation and share them with others? So by choosing to be on the team, I began to see purpose for my life, a goal for becoming a kingdom builder, and working to build God's kingdom on earth as Jesus did. A real satisfaction began to come over me. I began seeing who I could become and what I could be. I began to think about what it meant to be a member of God's team, just like being on a football player in today's big game will do. I began to ask, what can I do for the team? Where could I fit in on this team of king builders? And mostly, I began to ask, what are the gifts and talents given to me by God, which could help this team? As I began to explore my gifts and talents, all kinds of possibilities opened up for me of who and what I could become on God's team. And God was not asking me to be perfect, but to grow. And in doing so, I could help others and myself in becoming better kingdom builders. In the Super Bowl today, we will watch many guys who have dedicated their lives to be the best football players they can be. But for today, I'd like to tell you about one person who became the best football player he could, and I believe he was also a member of God's team. Recently, I was looking for something to watch on TV. None of my usual shows were on, and I was looking for a movie to watch. I came upon a movie called Greater. I read the info about what the movie was about, and it was going to be about a young man who became an Arkansas Razorback football player. Now, being from Missouri and a Missouri football fan, but I decided I was probably a real good football fan enough that maybe this story would interest me. And it did. I had never heard of this boy who was the main character of the movie. Maybe you have. His name was Brandon Burlsworth. Shortly into the movie, I was hooked on the intrigue of the story. For Brandon was a young boy growing up in Harrison, Arkansas. Been there several times, so I knew where it was from. Even though he was more of a couched potato as a young boy, he decided watching a Razorback football game on TV one day that he was going to be on the Razorback football team. His older brother, kind of laughed it off and said, "There's no way," with him being a couch potato and being kind of big, but not very athletic, to his brother's taking. And there were a lot of other people that had the same thing about, there's no way this boy is ever going to become a Division I football player. But he was committed to the dream of one day being a Razorback football player. Importantly, not just a member, but a starter who would contribute to their winning. The important part of the movie was that Brandon was also on God's team. He was a Christian man, a young man, who believed that God was on his side. And keeping God in your heart, a person can do anything through hard work, perseverance, and dedicated to be the best they can be. Let me tell you now that there is somewhat a tragic ending to this story. It's not a feel good all the way to the end. But for me, it was about the faith in God that this young man had and who and what he could do. I began to see that how much believing on yourself and others and what a good team member should be. I recommend you watch it if you can, so you can tell, so as to not tell you everything about the movie. Let me tell you who Brandon Burlsworth was. I read from Wikipedia, and I'll read for you now. Brandon graduated in 1994 from Harrison, Arkansas, where he was an all-state selection, and he volunteered as a walk-on football player to the University of Arkansas, despite having scholarships to smaller universities. After his red shirt, for those who aren't football field, red shirt is the first year he didn't play in any games, so they could hold his eligibility for 4 more years of playing football. And after that first year in 1994, he transformed his pudgy 300-pound frame into a slender 260 pounds of muscle. And over the next years, he built backed his body into a muscular 300-pound offensive guard. By his sophomore season, which would be his third year now at Arkansas, he had earned a scholarship, and was a starting right guard on the offensive line. Then, before his junior year in 1997, he was selected to be one of the team captains. Burlsworth's efforts earned him first-team All-SEC football honors in 1997 and 1998. And he was selected to the 1998 College Football All-American team. He was the first All-American player since 1993 and their first player selected to be first team squad since 1989. He was also named to the All-SEC Academic Honor Roll every year from 95 to 98. He played in 2 SEC Western Division Championship Razorback teams in 95 and 98. When Brandon graduated in 1998 from the University of Arkansas with a BA in Business Administration, the following year he completed an MBA. He was the first football player to complete a master's degree for playing in his final game, which was the Citrus Bowl in 1999. After his career with the Razorbacks, Brandon was invited to the NFL Combine. At the Combine, Burleson topped all linemen with a 4.88-yard dash. He bench pressed 225 pounds 28 times and weighed 308 pounds and measured slightly below 6'4". During the NFL draft, the Baltimore Colts selected Burleson for the 63rd pick in the third and final round. After participating in the Colts minicamp, he impressed the team's then offensive line coach, Howard Mudd, and was projected to be a starter for the Colts in the 1999 season. The tragic part of his story is that Burleson did not ever play a game, did not practice again with the Colts, as a truck accident took his life on the way home from the University of Arkansas to Harrison, Arkansas. So 11 days after he was drafted, Burleson was killed in that accident near Alpena, Arkansas. And he was buried on May 2nd, 1999 in Omaha, Arkansas. You know, there's a lot of the life of this football player. The movie tells you about his faith in God, his life as a member of God's team, and the effect on those who knew him, both at the University of Arkansas and at his hometown in Harrison, Arkansas. But to tell you more about the Brandon effect, as I call it, I've turned to our resident University of Arkansas superfan, Lori Collier, to tell you about the lasting effect of Brandon.
Thanks, Bruce, for sharing the Brandon Burlsworth story. We here at Arkansas are pretty proud of it. For those of you that don't know, I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. We live about 10 minutes from campus, and I graduated from school in 1991. And so when Bruce brought up Brandon Burlsworth, we're very familiar with that here. And we go to all of the home football games. So after Brandon passed away, his family and friends developed what is called the Brandon Burlsworth Foundation. And they are honored at every football game. They're very active within the state of Arkansas. And at every game in the corner of the stadium over by the band, there's a section reserved for them, and they call it the Burls Kids. And we call it Doing It the Burls Way. And they bring kids to every game that otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to come. And they all wear the dark frame glasses. They're in the pictures. And share his love for not only the game, but for being on God's team. And his family has been extremely active throughout the state. They do football camps. They have a program for eyeglasses. They do scholarships and awards, and those are announced every year during the football season. And they do that during one of the games. They announce all of them on the field. So here at Arkansas, he had a lasting impact. Brandon has a permanent locker in the locker room that is reserved for him to remind those players of what it's like to do it the Burls way. So to have that lasting impact on that short of a life is unbelievable, really. If we could all only be that proud to do that and to have the outreach that he has done and the legacy that he left here at Arkansas. And hopefully if you watch the movie, which I hope you will if you haven't, you too can take a little bit of Doing It the Burls Way and share that love that he had for God and for the game.
So as you can see, Brandon had quite an effect on the community of Fayetteville, Arkansas, and even his hometown, Harrison, Arkansas. Why? Because he was a member of God's team. He chose to be. He chose to show his faith to others. He showed to share his life of being a follower of Jesus Christ with others. And in so doing, he changed the culture around a team to become winning, to make an impact, and to affect the lives of others. I believe we're all called to be on that team, to do what we can. We may not be burly 6'3" football players, but whatever we do, and we do for the work of the Lord, the God that I know, we begin to build his kingdom and communities of joy, love, hope, and peace as we are called. Thank you.